Okay.
Hi, guys. Thank you so much for joining me again today. I'm here with Lori Rehfeldt,
Uh,
author of Rendlesham Lone Ranger, and she has quite an interesting story about her time in the military. So why don't we talk about it, Lori? What do you want to tell the folks?
well, um, I just recently finally I've been wanting to write the book for about, oh my gosh, since I left England back in 1980. And um anyway, it was a uh just something that when you're in a place or situation and it just seems like something's wrong here. You you don't forget it because you go to other places, you go to other bases, and you say, well, no, nothing, everything is good. So so anyway, um yeah, that's usually what happens. Uh hey Andrew, are you able to what do you call it, edit this?
Yeah.
Okay. Is there a way that I could see, instead of me looking at the book, oh, because I got the screen now, it looks at the book. I'd rather see you and me on it.
Okay, I'll do the stop share.
Oh, that's better.
Okay.
Thank you. I can see you now.
Yeah,
Okay, I'm sorry about that.
that's all right.
But it happened that, excuse me. God, now I'm trying to, today's been one of those days. Um, it really happened. I started writing this book really actively was in the fall time. I just went through a lot of different uh emotional events, having lost my sister and my mom and my dad, within the 2, 3 year period. And I needed to get my mind uh, off of that, or constructively use my grieving to to really funnel the energy into the story. And the story is really, it's a memoir, but it's really about, when you're a sensitive kid, and you, oh, hold on, sorry. When you're a sensitive kid, and I mean, you see the uh, Blessed Mother Mary in the elementary school, and you're trying to figure out what's this statue doing in the all-purpose room when all the other statues are in the church. I went to Catholic school. And you go home and you tell your mom, I saw this, but I couldn't figure out where they put the statue, because when I passed the second double doors, it was gone. And so I had a lot of these types of experiences as a kid, and my mom would put me in touch with my grandma, who actually spent several years as a nun. And she she told me it was a form of discernment. It was something going on with that I'm just sensitive to a lot of uh, what we would call paranormal now, and then all these kinds of events that occur. So I see myself and many others who experience this, not just me, who tend to be empathetic, tend to be sensitive to and care about others, and not wanting to hurt other people, that kind of thing. And so anyway, the process, it goes through that, and then my mom and dad get divorced, and all of a sudden, um, I didn't have any money to go to college, and I couldn't figure it out logistically, and I did not want to be a burden on my mom. So in 1977, after I graduated high school, I remembered this girl in high school who had all these brochures from the military, and I thought, well, Vietnam War is over, uh, but I would only check the Air Force and the Navy. I had no desire to go into the Army or the Marines, and so I went in and checked out the Air Force, and that was a journey all unto itself too. And they put me on delayed enlistment, and I went into the military in 19 January 1978. And at that point, I hadn't had in a long time any kind of events happening. Like when I was at basic training, everything felt good. Everything, I didn't feel any negative vibrations or anything that didn't feel like anything was off kilter. It was just pretty straightforward and it was fun. So yeah, I'm one of the few people I can say basic training was fun. And and then tech school was at the same location, and that was interesting because now we get to watch the basic training people marching around, but we learned a lot of interesting things about investigating accidents and incidents, and that kind of searching a room and all this. And they didn't really show us the gate guard that much. I think we spent about 10 minutes on the main gate waving cars in. So, and I grew up on Long Island. We didn't have any military bases, so I didn't have that frame of reference of gate guards. So I leave there. I'm all excited. I find out I've got an assignment to RAF Bentwaters, UK. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm going to England. This is like I just won a free trip. This is great. So I was really, really excited. And I went home for about 2 weeks. By the time I finished January, now it's May. So both my tech school and my basic training probably lasted 11 weeks or 12 weeks. So I get a letter from Major Ziegler while I'm home welcoming me, and I thought, oh, that's so nice. This is this sounds like it's going to be real camaraderie. I mean, it's what I experienced in basic training and tech school, and so I get to my base, Bentwaters, and it'd been a long night, and because we went from what was that? McGuire Air Force Base in New Jersey. We flew out of into Mildenhall in England. And Mildenhall looked like a great base. I was like, oh, this looks like I would, a wonderful base. I bet RAF Bentwaters is going to be as nice. We get to RAF Bentwaters, and as soon as we got there, it was like Quonset huts. I felt like went back to World War II, and and I was like, no, Lord, make the best of it. You're going to be here for 2 years. You got to make the best of it. And as soon as I got off the bus, I felt this heaviness over me, and I couldn't shake it. I was thinking, well, maybe I haven't slept in about 24 hours. Maybe I'm just exhausted. And I just felt like maybe I just need to sleep, and then I'll wake up and everything will feel fine. And unfortunately, that heaviness never left me. In fact, the energy that was there at the base was really sucking the life out of me. It was just I got to a point, and now my birthday is in May, so I spent my first birthday there. So I turned 19, and I just felt like I had no stamina. I had trouble standing up and moving around because it was as if the gravity was pushing down on me. And it was just really, really difficult. And everyone seemed to be really on edge. I would talk to some people, and they would say, if I met some of the security guys off duty, some of them would go up to me and say, well, how many days do you have left? And I'm like, what do you mean, how many days do I have left? And they said, well, I have 30 days and a wake up. And I'm thinking, well, let me see, I got 2 years, that's 365 times two. I said, I have a lot of days. And, and he, these types of conversations were just, he would walk away, and I'm like, okay, okay. I'm thinking, why would anybody want to count their days down? I mean, this isn't a war zone. We're in England. We're not that far from London. I mean, there are lots of things to do. And so as soon as I got onto flight, that's what we call the platoon, if you're familiar with other like small group of people that you're going to work directly with. And it turned out that out of there was between 200 to, I guess, 400 security police personnel. And out of all of them, there was maybe about five women in the entire career field. But back then in 1978, that was about normal. 5% of the Air Force was women, the rest were men. Uh, in a way, it was kind of disconcerting that there wasn't, it didn't feel like a level playing field in regard to, you know, equal amount of people and whatnot. And we had just gotten through, you probably remember this too, when women were going into the military academies and whatnot. It's like I just thought everything was opening up for women to be able to do all kinds of things. And I started hearing some of these guys say, you got two things against you. One, you're a woman, the other, you're a WAF. And I'm like, oh, they don't use the word WAF anymore. We're now integrated in the whole setup. WAF is Women Air Force.
Hmm.
And so, I mean, I didn't know. I was just not even 4 months ago. I was just a kid from Long Island, just doing my thing. Um, trying not to be a burden on my mom, but the last thing I needed was to, hear these types of things. I should be barefoot and pregnant. I'm like, no, I'm too young. And I said, I haven't found anyone I really love. So it's just a lot of those types of things were going on. So it wasn't, and then I saw it wasn't as though, I mean, they would throw these things at me, but it wasn't as though they were trying to get to know me. There were a handful of guys that did try and get to know me, and they were really nice, and I spent time with them. But for the most part, in the squadron, because I worked in law enforcement, there was maybe about 10 or 15 of us that worked in law enforcement. Some of the security guys would work with us to help us out, but for the most part, there was a divide, and the fact that I also lived across the base from the guys. The guys lived in one dormitory, and I lived with all the women from all the other career fields on one floor of a building. So there were maybe about 20 of us women. So it was really, really lopsided with that whole thing because in some cases I was getting more attention than I was used to in the back home. And I was thinking, I'm not that great. So I I was trying to fit in and trying to make sure I did a good job and all that. So I got on base and I mean, when I got onto flight, I just ended up I was working swings and mids, so I was working 4 in the evening to midnight, and then from midnight to 8 in the morning. So 3 days on a swing, and then 3 days on a mid, and then we were off for a 3-day break, which sounded fine to me, but I really didn't like working the whole night shift thing. I mean, that was really, really hard for me. Um, and then they were sharing a lot of stories about what was going on the base, mainly the fact that they said, you do know you're in the most haunted county in the world, Suffolk County. And the first thing I thought about, well, I grew up in Suffolk County, New York.
Hmm. Yeah.
But you don't understand. This is the most haunted. We've got witchcraft, witches and druids, and we've got there's a woman who rides a bicycle who doesn't have a face, which is really kind of bizarre. I'm glad I never saw her.
Yeah.
And so I was hearing all these stories, and then there was East End Charlie, who was at the very end of RAF Woodbridge. It was a long uh, runway that was running parallel with the perimeter road where we had this little it looked like a telephone booth size gate check,
Hmm.
but behind it was a Rendlesham forest. A Rendlesham forest was huge, but it went during the daytime. It was really kind of pretty. I thought it looked like something out of Hansel and Gretel, except of course they go into the house where the witch is. So there you go. But at night it was foreboding. At night, it was almost perfect for the scene in the movie when the fog would roll in over the runway, and you could hear the sound of the foghorn in distance from the lighthouse, and and then you had this black forest behind you that you really can't see through it, but you kind of I was getting a vibe that there was something there. And and at this place, quite a few people were afraid. I would say a lot of people were afraid to work that gate, especially if you had to work at the midnight shift. And when I got there, w the first year I was there, we did have to work it during the midnight shift. And then they finally decided, not that many cars come through this gate at night, if any, and they said, why don't we just lock it? And then if someone needs to come in, they can call the desk and the patrol can go out and unlock it for them,
Hmm.
which made good sense. And but those first few times when I was there, I started to feel it was a midnight shift. It was about 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and I started to feel a gray behind me, and I'm sitting in the gate shack, so there are windows all around me. So I would figure that this gray couldn't be more than 4 feet tall,
Hmm.
because pretty much like his eyes and part of his face was staring, pressing against the glass. But I didn't see it with my eyes. It was like my mind's eye, and he said to me in my mind, he said, I know you're afraid. Don't look back. And I'm sitting there thinking, I'm trying to keep awake. That's okay. I'm just trying to keep awake. I'm not looking back. I don't want to be scared. That's how I put it, because I just couldn't. I I felt I could not get on the phone. We had a landline in the gate shack, and I couldn't get on the phone to talk to the desk and say, hey, look, I need somebody to come out here because there's a gray behind me and he's scaring the hell out of me. And, uh, you know, I don't like it. I'm scared.
Uh-huh.
But we had people. I was on Butley Gate, which is the other back gate to Bentwaters. The East Gate was the back gate to RAF Woodbridge. They call them sister bases, Bentwaters and Woodbridge. And so there were guys out there that would shoot their weapon off, and I would get my phone would ring in Butley Gate, and they said, Rayfeld, what are you doing? And I'm like, what do you mean, what am I doing? I'm sitting, I'm just watching, waiting. And they hung up on me. And then later I found out that one of the guys, one of the security guys who was working with us, um, decided to shoot his weapon. I don't know if he was shooting at something or what, but um, that's why they were calling. They wanted to find out if I was I took my 38 out and I was shooting them or shooting at something. I don't know. And but it was always like that. They're very, very disruptive in the sense of, they would only tell you what, did you do something? No. Okay, click. So it wasn't like, oh, well, we figured out this is what's happening, so we need to find out if it was you or if it was a person on Eastgate. No, it was just pretty much hang up. So, uh, so that was one of my first experiences was with the gray, and then
Did you ever look at him or?
just in my mind, no, I wasn't going to turn around.
Yeah, I understand the feeling. Totally.
Yeah, but
I've
I
been
mean, I
close.
mean, I mean, but vividly, he did come across. I mean, he did look like a gray. His eyes weren't big though; they weren't like the cat eye. They were small. Um, but yeah, but he was like deathly white, just really looked like he needed to get out in the sun. And and then the next place, and it wasn't, at times I wouldn't feel anything, and then all of a sudden something would happen, and I go, oh man, I started to get this fight or flight feeling,
Hmm.
and I was on patrol. Now this is several months later. I'm on patrol over on Bentwater's side, and this is really the only thing that happened at Bentwater's is that there was this crazed kind of a monster swamp man who was trying to push his face against my truck. Again, the same thing, but I wouldn't look. He was taunting me, and I'm like, no, I'm not looking. But I had to get out of the truck because I had to check to see if the lock on the liquid oxygen tanks was locked. So I ran out, checked it, because sometimes the supervisor would leave a note behind the lock just to make sure that you got out of your vehicle. So, and then, and I got back in the truck and I put the truck in reverse, and I just flew out of there and went back to patrolling around where I felt okay. It was just, and now it was like a place, kind of like when you have a panic attack in certain areas. This was my place that I did not want to go to because I knew something was there and that was evil. And I knew too, now this is interesting because I I felt there was a pond behind that it was overgrown, so you couldn't see through it. It was so and it was off base. So it was on the other side of the it was on the other side of the gate. So I was on base, it was off base on the other side of the fence. And I just knew there was a pond there. So I was kind of thinking, well, maybe he drowned or something happened or whatnot. Then, many, many decades later, Google Earth was there. I was curious. I wonder if there is a pond there. Sure enough, there is. So, some of this intuition or these feelings, some of it, I take it as very, very real. I take it as very, very concrete. It may be considered circumstantial evidence, but in many ways, I mean, I guess I could have invited him into my truck and said, "Hey, look, I need you so people will know that you're real." It's just, when people say, "Well, where's the evidence?" I have a broken branch that he grabbed and it broke. I'm being facetious, but it was so anyway, I had to deal with him anytime I was on patrol with the and having to check that lock and this all happened on the midnight shift. Nothing like this happened on the day shift. I mean, the evening shift, the 4 o'clock to midnight shift. The the one thing that did happen that I thought was really interesting, I don't think I ever mentioned this one before, but there was a moment where I was at the Ivy Lodge gate because that's where he was, where the locks, liquid oxygen is. And it was about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and all of a sudden the sky turned dark, and then it was like a big wave rolled across the sky at the same speed you would see a wave on, if you're at the beach and you see the wave coming in and it moves. It wasn't slow at all. It was just, and that really, I jumped in my gate shack thinking, oh my God, what's going, it's like this, something was going on, like the sky was, falling in. I'd never seen anything like that. Maybe some people would have a logical explanation for it, but then I started hearing later on about that was an area where they were doing those experiments with cloud busting.
Mm.
So they were seeding the clouds, and so that could have been that. There were quite a few experiments going on outside of the base, and and I kind of think that some of these experiments woke up quite a few things. I think it even punched a hole in the between dimensions and the realms because they were playing around with Einstein's theory of relativity and trying to make things invisible and trying, they were, it's kind of like, well, we have an area here. It's really isolated. It's in the sticks. So if anyone sees it, usually they're uneducated or they're very low rank or they're farmers or people that uh, loggers who cut wood. So they don't have much credibility. And so it's interesting that it is a good place to do a lot of these experiments. Um, one other gentleman that I worked with, he was actually on Charlie flight. I was on Bravo flight, and he was John Burroughs. He was one of the witnesses who was at Rendlesham Forest, and he was with Jim Penniston. And he's been looking heavily at the weaponization of what's going on, what they were trying to do. I mean, yeah, they were definitely trying to make themselves invisible. Um, so we could win the Cold War, I guess. It's like we were all worried about the Russians and whatnot. And I just I looked at some of that. I mean, one of the first experiments I learned about was Cobra Mist, and talking to Professor Simon Holland, he's learned a lot about what they were doing at all these different places, and and so I really think that that opened up a lot of negative energy, especially near Woodbridge, and but when you look at Woodbridge, you would think it's there's nothing there. It's pretty boring. It's at the time we could see the runway, and then about a year later they put a blast wall in between the gate and the runway because we had times where it felt like the windows in the gate shack were going to burst open, and so. So for the most part, it was, it was pretty boring. So it wasn't like all this crazy stuff is happening all the time. This has happened over a 2-year period. But while that's going on, I've got my supervisors who are giving me a hard time, um, just because they could. And I would get to the point where I was on the back gate, I was on East Gate, and I looked behind me, and there's this big, it's kind of like a big parking area or a pad where if if somebody wanted to put supplies there for the mechanics or aircraft mechanics, it's a great place to just put stuff.
Mhm.
And I look back and I see this colonel. He's a full bird colonel, and he's in his flight suit. I see him with my eyes. This is not one I didn't see. It was during the day, and I got to the gate, and so it's about 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and he's leaning against some of the boxes of supplies, and he's smoking a cigarette, and but he didn't have his cap on or his hat. So the way a lot of my supervisors would behave, or the sergeants would behave, would be, Rehfeldt, why didn't you go over there and tell the colonel to put his hat on? So I'm thinking, oh my God. I mean, we didn't have any high-ranking people at the base. So full bird colonel was as high as you can get. So and that was too high for me. I was thinking, last thing he needs is an airman to say, "Sir, you got to put your hat on. Don't you know you got to wear your hat?" And so so I turned around. I finally got the gumption to tell him to put his hat on when all of a sudden. he was gone. Now there was a fence that ran parallel to the perimeter road, and my gate check's on the perimeter road, and then the rest of the area, it's a big field, so you can see the runway. So I walked out in the middle of the road because there were no cars coming, of course, to see where he went because there was no way that he could have. He had to go up onto the perimeter road to go down to, you know. So I'm looking for him, thinking, where the heck is, where the heck is he? Oh gosh, I guess at the advent of the internet, I wrote about this story, and and someone got contacted me. This woman contacted me. She was the daughter of Colonel Colonel Thompson. I think Tommy Thompson was his name, and she told me that, and he had just recently passed away at an air show. He was flying an A-10, and there must have been some foreign object stuff in his aircraft that caused the aircraft to malfunction and cartwheel over the trees. I think the base it was Chick Sands, I think, RF Chick Sands. But he died. He died, and he was known as being the test pilot for the A-10s, and it was devastating because apparently he was just a really nice guy, and he loved what he did, and so they actually named one of the roads after him on the base. It's called Thompson Drive. And so when she said that, I realized that, she said you described my dad, because he was like that. He'd be smoking and doesn't wear his hat, doesn't listen to, all this stuff. And I took that to heart because he had just recently passed away. And I'm thinking, well, maybe he didn't realize that I don't know, that he was not of this world anymore.
Hmm.
So all these things that I was seeing, I could not share with anybody. And the main reason being was that um, the commander, Major Ziegler at the time, uh, would look for anything to railroad you out, drum you out of the military. And at that time, the economy in the late 70s, I think we were in a recession, and it was just not a good time to go home and look for a job.
No, it wasn't.
So, and many of us, we kind of want to stick around for however long. I mean, at least finish our 4 years or, figure out what we want to do. I mean, we're all young. And he was out processing more people coming in than not. I mean, we were constantly getting larger groups of airmen coming in, like influxes, and and uh, and it was mainly because a lot of these guys that they either felt the feeling of they have to get out of here. I mean, this was real. I was talking to Steve LaPlume about that, and he said, yeah, he said. He'd only been at the base for about a month or so, and he said, all of a sudden, I just got the feeling if I stay here, I'm going to die. And
Wow.
and this was a similar theme with others that I had met. Now, being empathetic, it was, my heart was going out to them because these are really, really good guys. I felt like, why is Major Ziegler making it hard, throwing these people out? And I mean, we had they went what they called snap, and and then he was using other things that were underhanded, like using the jab, where the attorneys on the base would say, "Well, listen, we can get you out. You're not doing the job you were assigned to do, so that's how we'll get you out." But what they did not explain was that on the DD Form 214, there would be a code there that would say, do not, this person cannot re-enlist. And a lot of the guys, they didn't know that was on there. They just knew that they were going to get an honorable discharge and get out. And in some cases, there were some that wanted to come back in, and that's how they learned. They learned, we don't know what's going on, but you've got this thing on your paper, and it says you can't re-enlist or you can't enlist again. And so that made it really difficult. So
Mhm.
so we had the ghost of Thompson, we've had the gray, the crazed monster at the locks over at Bentwater side. I'm getting further into my career, and I'm now about a year and almost 2 years in when I'm on patrol. Now I'm on Delta flight. They would move us around periodically because they would need a woman on a certain flight. So if there was a woman coming in, anyway, I volunteered, I think. And I got onto D flight, and I was on patrol with Keith Duffield, Airman Duffield, and really, really nice guy. I think he's from Oklahoma, and but he loved to drink his Mountain Dew.
Mhm.
He always had a Mountain Dew in his hand. In fact, I think I have a photo of him with his Mountain Dew in his hand. So that was his thing, and we were on patrol, and patrol really meant mainly checking on the main gate personnel. So at the time, it was Doc Rhodes was on the main gate, and so I'd check on him and say, "You guys want to go for eat midnight chow or something?" And I'll take over the gate. So they would go, and then they'd come back, and then Duffield and I would go back out and check the buildings and do whatever we needed to do. And then it was about 3 in the morning, and we got to East Gate. Now this is a time where the gate is now closed, so no one has to sit out there. And then so we went up to check the lock on the gates. And
Mhm.
I got out, and it was February, so it was really, 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 really cold. Um, we're so close to the North Sea. It's almost like the damp coldness it penetrates right through you. And if you feel like if your feet are damp, they can be damp all night. It was just that way. So we got to the gate, and then I back up the truck to the east gate, uh, to the shack, and and we're just talking, and I'm just filling in my check sheet, just checking off because they wanted us to put the time and initial and all this stuff. And then we're looking out, and we're facing the direction of the North Sea. And we see an airplane coming in, and it's just an oval type of shaped light. It was white. It was a white light, and it was coming in, and it got about right to the beginning. Before he was about ready to land. He was about 200-300 feet. Let me see. From us, he was probably about 200-300 feet away. But he was very close to the runway, and he was probably about 30 feet up high, and it stopped, and it didn't make any noise. It ended up kind of doing a pulsating a little bit, and then breaking into three pieces, going up, down, left, right, and then breaking into three pieces, and then doing this like curve down about 10 feet off the runway, and then shot up in the air. And it just he flew onto the base, and that was a problem because we had nuclear bombs there, or conventional nuclear bombs. And so I had to report it, but we had to report it. So I hand the radio over to Duffield, um, because he's a guy, and chances are they won't give him as much heat as they'll give me. And he goes, no, 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 you're lead patrol, you call it in.
Hmm.
So, that was something that, it just weighs on you. I mean, it just weighs hard. It's like you have to uh, face the ridicule,
Hmm.
and at this point my skin was really thin in regard to facing the ridicule. I just didn't want to do it. And I was thinking, well, what if we don't report it? Well, what if we do? I gotta report it. We have to. So I had no choice. I mean, in my mind, ethically, the whole thing, did I want to report it? No, no. But did I have to report it? Yes. So I get on the radio and start saying, police control, this is police four, be advised, there was a light that I didn't even get halfway through what I was trying to say when it was, I think Adam Cohen was the desk sergeant at the time. And he said, Rayfeld, go to the East Gate and get on the landline. So I go to the East Gate thinking, yeah, that's good, good. And I tried to explain to him what we saw. And then he said, well, go out to the air tower. We had an air tower over at Woodbridge. Go over to the air tower and see what they saw. And of course, they did not see anything because we woke the guy up. And it was like so, so frustrating. And I mean, I was angry at that point because if he had been awake, he would have seen it. Uh, I actually just learned in the past few months that Doc Rhodes, who was on police, he was the main gate. He was the one that we relieved. That he actually saw the lights from his perspective when he was doing the geometric movement. So there were three of us who saw it.
Hmm.
And and then when I'm walking down the stairs, they were outside stairs, walk down, and I'm looking out toward the North Sea because the air tower guy said, "Oh, we think it was afterburners from a British fighter." And I'm thinking, no, no, no way. It does. This thing made no noise whatsoever. There was no way. So I was just feeling like frustrated between a rock and a hard place and didn't know what to do with this information. And what I didn't realize, it took me many, many years later, is that this whole incident happened at 3 o'clock in the morning. It felt like it only lasted maybe 5 minutes, if that long.
Hmm.
Next thing you know, we're heading over there um, to the air tower. I'm leaving the air tower, and now it's daybreak. And February in England stays dark till almost 7 in the morning. So it was just like, at that many years later, I didn't feel it then. Back then, I just kind of went about, my time. I don't know why, I didn't see any difference with the check sheet and the timing and everything, but it should not have been daybreak. And so I do believe that there was lost time.
Hmm.
Maybe one day someone will hypnotize me and let me know what happened.
Yeah, I need to do that too.
Yeah, yeah, we can share stories. So, and the only other thing that happened during that time period was the being not far from Eastgate. I was in the non-nuclear munitions area. They call it the NMSA. And I was guarding, and it was probably about the same time because it was really, really cold, icy rain coming down, and like I get to my little gate shack, and I put my alert bag in, and then when you're working guarding the bombs, you got to carry an M16. So then I put the M16 on my shoulder and I start heading out to the buildings to check on them. When in my mind, again, my mind's eye, I saw this 7 foot praying mantis, muscular. He looked like a soldier, but he was pacing back and forth, and he said, "Don't go." And I'm like, "Okay." Going back to my gate check.
Yeah.
And I said, in my mind, I said, I'm just gonna wait. I'm just gonna wait till it's daylight, and then I'll run around and check all my buildings. So yeah, so I got in my gate check, and my music back then was pretty eclectic. I think I was listening to this soundtrack to Annie. So I'm sitting there like, the sun will come up tomorrow. Bet your bottom dollar that tomorrow it won't be a mantid.
Wow.
But I didn't know they were called mantids. When it comes to the whole UFO, when you start talking to people, they're, you know, I mean, I have done so much research on this myself. Um, and then when I found out in 1996 or 97 that it came back, that there was a Rendlesham Forest incident that occurred 2 weeks after I left. I left England December 15th. And it was just uh I just feel like I escaped that place. I felt like I wanted to run away from that place. I wanted nothing to do with it. And I get to my next base, and everything is the way it should be. It's normal. Like, okay, yeah, no gravity pushing down on me. But I did go up to one of the sergeants that I knew over in England and wanted his opinion of what he thought was going on over in England. And he had this really weird smile on his face, like, don't go there, don't go there. And I'm thinking, okay, I guess I'm not gonna go there. So, so I left. I mean, but I think there were some people that did kind of know that there was something bizarre going on over
Mhm.
there. And and I heard the one story, and it's interesting because when I share my story, people give you some really wonderful feedback. I mean, this one guy said, "Oh yeah, I was the driver that would drop you off at the East Gate, and it would drop me off at the East Gate, and he was driving this Metro van where you didn't have any windows on the sides, except the driver. The driver had a window.
Mhm.
And the rest of us were sitting on the floor of this Metro van. So, he would just drop you off. But one day he said that he picked up everyone and he was driving the van off of Eastgate, off of RAF Woodbridge. And then he made the left turn. Um, and at that point, he looked, in his rearview mirror or his side mirror, and he saw this woman on a bicycle. And she looked like something out of the 1920s or something from almost like, or she probably looked like somebody like Dorothy on Wizard of Oz.
Mhm.
And she's riding a bicycle, an old-fashioned bicycle. And he's like freaking out when he notices that she doesn't have a face. It's almost like a white mask or something. And and he's freaking out. He doesn't want the guys behind him to know what he's seeing. And of course, he doesn't want to be ridiculed. So he starts driving a little bit faster. And now he's going about 50 miles an hour. And he looks and she's right beside him. He's like, he couldn't shake her. And he finally gets to RAF Bellwaters to drop off the guys uh at the armory. And yeah, that scared the hell out of him. It was one of those things. And of course, even him, you just couldn't share, you couldn't talk about it. The most that I think people had the opportunity of commiserating somewhat was during the Rendlesham Forest incident because so many high-ranking people had seen it. And, they had credibility. Me and Duffield did not have credibility. It was like we were just airmen. We weren't even non-commissioned officers. So, um, so they could kind of make fun of you and say, dismiss it. And and I got to a point where I knew if I didn't shut up, or if I pursued any of the things I witnessed and experienced, I would have been railroaded out. And and I wasn't ready to leave yet because, I just felt like I was better than this place, and I just felt like I just need to get on with, my career.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I did. And at that point I decided I knew I had to get my degree. So I got my degree in 4 years. So in 86, I started looking around for a commissioning program and that kind of thing, and then became an officer. But but yeah, there were just a lot of obstacles that they kind of threw in our path. I mean, I kind of wonder if we were all a part of an experiment in many ways. But I do believe that when you're sensitive, empathetic, you're a lightning rod. People, it's not just people, but the invisible, the visible, invisible, ghosts, paranormal. They pick up on it. They know, uh, and I just think that that's a reality. And um, and I don't think this is something that's exceptional to other people. I just think that we all have it. We all have this, if you want to call it. My grandma called it a gift, but she said it's not going to make your life easy. So I said, so much for a gift. But it was, it was just, you know, it just was what it was. It was something that you could share and see what, and learn from others. I mean, that's what I try and do now,
Mm-hmm.
because it's like you said earlier, it's with you. And I'd love you to share your story.
Yeah, well, I had a series of UFO sightings in 1980, just before, a few months before the Rendlesham thing
Hmm.
and before you left England. It was the summer of 1980, and I had just gotten my first car. So a friend and I I lived near Buffalo, New York. A friend and
Hmm.
I went down to Lake Erie, and we were just hanging out, and there's this UFO, and it's right there. It's very obvious. It's not a light in the sky. It's a craft in front of us over the water. And for 5 or 6 nights, we kept seeing the same craft. And on one of the nights, we were at a little bit down the street from where we first sighted it, and there was 3 or 4 cars there. We're all sitting there looking at this UFO, which is only a couple 100 feet away, quite obvious, right in front of us.
Hmm.
And I decided, well, I'm going to flash my lights at this thing and see what happens. And the next thing I know, it's 2 a.m. and all the other cars are gone. And I don't remember seeing them leave. So I had this 2 hour missing time thing
Hmm.
while we were watching this UFO. And I have no idea what happened in the 2 hours. All I know is there was cars there. We were all watching it, and then I flashed my lights and they were gone. And then so at the end of the nights, the last night we saw this thing, it was right there, right in front of us again, and it sent these orange lights down into the water, hundreds of them. And these orange lights went straight down and then straight back up. And when they went into the water, they could move through the water like the water wasn't even there. They
Hmm.
went through the water as easily as they went through the air. And it was fascinating. It was just like being in a Hollywood movie.
Hmm.
My friend said, oh my God, I gotta see what these things are. So I wasn't that brave. So I stayed in the car, and
Yeah.
she went down there right up to the shore. And she said, she came back and she said there was little creatures in there in these orange balls. So at that point, I started to get a little scared. So I went down to Hamburg Beach. There's a boat launch,
Hmm.
and I knew I could drive up to the water. I didn't have to get out myself.
Yeah, yeah.
Like the car was going to save me from anything. So I drove practically into the water on this boat ramp, and one of those orange lights came right up to the car. Now, I didn't ever end up seeing any of the entities that were driving them. And when it came up to the car, I said, "That's it." I went home, and we never went back to see if it would come back. But obviously, it was very interested in us. And uh,
Hmm.
I don't know what would have happened if I would have gotten out of the car at that point, because the only time the orange lights came out of the water was when they were right under the craft. So I don't know if I would have been able to talk to these things or whatnot. Probably not. I don't really speak alien. I don't know if you do, but
Well, I kind of think that that they will put it into your mind in the language you know, because what you mentioned earlier about, later on down the road, I start having recurring nightmares, and most of it is going to driving around Bentwaters, and it's a dead base now, and uh, because they closed it down in '93. And I'm driving around and I'm on patrol and I go up to the desk, and now the desk is pretty much falling apart and whatnot. And I keep telling people I don't belong here, and they're telling me, no, you got to stand on the gate. You got to do this. And then I'm still driving in my car, in the patrol car. Next thing I'm not in England. It's like England, everything was dark and green and wet. And now I'm on a desert road, and I'm driving into this desert, and with the blue sky and the whole thing, and I end up close to a pond that's clear blue water. It looks like a crater. It's clear blue water, and it's something peaceful about it. And then I find, so I keep having this dream, and in many ways it doesn't make any sense. And then later on, I find I get this complimentary copy, National Geographic, from, I think it was 96 and 97. I actually found the copy, so I could tell you, if I had it in front of me, what year it was. I mean, what cover was on. I think there was a gorilla on the cover, and but I opened it up, and it was a pond. It was Palo Azul or something, and it was near. Um, I would say it's like really on top of it. It was probably about 50 miles or something like that, but it was very, very close to the zone of silence.
mm,
And the zone of silence is in Mexico.
hmm
So, and then I'm thinking, well, this is where I was doing a lot of my research. I'm thinking, okay, what's the connection between zone of silence and what was going on over in England? Well, there were two things. One was uh, the relationship between what do you call it, the zone of silence and the pyramids,
hmm
and same thing with England, over at Bentwaters area. There was these connections, and they intersected through the Bermuda Triangle. And but I was thinking there's got to be something else going on, because at that point, this is probably about maybe 20 years ago. At that point, I would go outside and look up at the sky, and I would see at nighttime, and I would see what looked like kind of like a freckle, but it wasn't. I couldn't make it out like a birthmark,
hmm
and but I could only see it with my peripheral vision. I couldn't see it directly. If I looked head on, I couldn't see it unless I had binoculars. And it turned out, but there was something about it that it's almost like I kept looking for it every night, thinking, there's something comforting about this. Turns out it was Pleiades. They this. the star cluster of Pleiades.
Mm.
And I'm thinking, so then I went back and I was looking to see what the connection was with Pleiades in England, Bentwaters, Woodbridge, and Zone of Silence. Turns out that the connection is Pleiades, the star cluster, is in this place called Sutton Hoo. It's these mounds that they actually dug, they've actually excavated some of it, and there was a buried, like a Viking ship,
Mm.
and yeah, it's a, I think it's a museum now. They did a movie on it. I think it's on Netflix called The Dig. So if you ever decide you want to see it, that's right on top of RAF Woodbridge. I mean, they might as well be on the same base.
Wow.
So okay, so now I feel good. I got Pleiades there, and then but what about in the Zone of Silence? And then found out that there are these there's this woman and two men who are really, really tall and they're blonde and they walk around the Zone of Silence helping people who get lost. And sometimes people have car problems or something like that. And then people will say, well, where are you from? And they look up, like, yeah, we're from up there. And, so they had, I mean, sightings of this. People would say, yeah, well, we saw those three people. Um, Very nice. They asked for a glass of water or something like that. But, so there's a connection. And I just believe that whatever's out there wants us to know. What they want us to know, I have no idea.
Yeah.
Except, except, well, there is one thing I do know is they, the the best and only asset that we have here as humans, it's not ourselves. It's not even the all the animals on the planet, or it's however, we should be stewards of our planet. It's this blue gem of a planet that we live on that we're really carelessly or cavalier ways of destroying. And people are like, well, the planet's, we could pour crap into the waters and not a big deal. It'll go away. We've really pushed it to the limit. So I believe that the a lot of the sightings that people have something to do with uh, they don't want us to destroy our planet. They
Hmm.
want us to be smart about it and to take care of one another. To all this bombing going on in different places to knock it off. We're playing with fire. They see us as children playing with matches, and they're pretty much wanting to bop us on the head and say, knock it off.
Hmm.
And
I think they're trying to raise our consciousness so we get away
yeah,
from all that insanity.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And and to use kindness as a weapon, because kindness we'll all end up being together. But right now, a lot of people see kindness as a weakness when
Hmm.
it's not. It's not. Have you ever, when you've done something really good, helping somebody, and you just feel like, man, I feel really good. I feel
Hmm.
like this person, and there's gratitude. Like I have gratitude when lately I've been getting feedback from about my book and people like, I couldn't put the book down. I listened to it and because they're listening to my story and they're listening to my heart.
Hmm.
And I just feel that if they're getting something positive out of it to realize that it's really about all of us taking care of each other and that when I became an officer, one of the things that I felt is that I wanted to treat my soldiers, because I was in the army now, I wanted to treat my soldiers better than the way that I was treated. I just think that that was so unnecessary. and that we all respect each other where we come from and our differences and whatnot. So it's yeah. So that's my story. But yeah,
Great, Lori.
so anyway, I truly hope that you get a chance to read the book and others do because it's I think out of all the books it's not a repeat of the same old. However, um, if you ask, well, did you bring back uh any concrete proof, you know? Well, I did ask the Gray to come back with me and, be my friend and take him out and about and show him around and but you know what? Here's the thing. If say I did that, right, and I had the Gray with me, chances are there would be government people or somebody would want to take this being and kill it and dissect it.
Yeah, like ET.
Yeah, because that's what humans do.
Hmm.
And so I understand why they don't want to get too close to us because we're not the smartest, we're not the nicest. We're pretty we're pretty what's the word I'm looking for? Out of control, in regard to being we have no care for any of the animals, the beings, and whatnot. Um, like I can't even bear the fact and I live in Arizona, Tucson,
Hmm.
and I've had some rattlesnakes in my yard, and fortunately we got this thing where we can call the fire department and they'll come and pick up the snake and move the snake over about a mile away from the house.
Hmm.
So, you know, the thought of killing another animal that's just trying to live, it just seems wrong because most of these animals are not aggressive unless you step on one or something. But, it's yeah, gotta love one another. Come on, people now, smile for each other.
Exactly. I feel the exact same way. And I think these ETs are trying to get us to a point where we don't hate each other anymore.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we're kind of going a little backwards on that one now, but I think that, with every, change is the only thing that we are confident will happen, that there'll be change or maybe the pendulum will move where it's a little bit fairer, and but yeah, it's it's a mess and I guess it's a good thing that they're out there, and they are talking to us. I mean, we're not the only ones they're talking to, trying to, help us. But I do think when Close Encounters of the Third Kind came out, that wasn't long after my UFO sighting. And it was interesting that um, most of what had happened, I buried it. I wanted to run away from it all. I did not want to talk about it. In fact, I did the first time I ever talked about it was with Stephen Greer
Hmm.
for his disclosure project, because that was about the same time that I found out that it came back through Larry Warren's book, Left at East Gate.
Mm.
And so, trying to think, what was I just saying? Yeah, so his book came out, and so I was going through this awakening. So I guess I was in touch with all these different people. Georgina Bruni, who wrote "You Can't Tell the People," which was a quote from Margaret Thatcher, and Stephen Greer had his disclosure project, and he interviewed me. But the only thing I would talk about was the UFO sighting. That was the only thing I was comfortable talking about.
Hmm.
Mainly because at the time I was a captain in the Army Reserves. I just wasn't ready to talk about a mantid, wasn't ready to talk about all these other things. Because I do get that question sometimes, well, how come you're talking about it now? It's like, because I'm retired, I'm safe.
Was that 2001 you were talking to Dr. Greer?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I regret one thing is that I did not go to that press conference. I was supposed to go, and um, my partner at the time said I would be ridiculed, and having gone through being ridiculed, I finally agreed, and I did not go.
Hmm.
So I think I let down Stephen Greer, which I regret. I regret. But then the next day, the Washington Post, one of the journalists from the Washington Post, wrote this scathing article about the press conference, and just that. What did these people see? Oh, they saw a UFO. He was making fun. He was just making fun of all these people that had the courage to get up there and speak and share what they knew. I ended up writing him a long email saying, "You are the reason why it's so difficult for people to talk about it, to get disclosure.
Yeah.
Us, you're ridiculing them. You're doing exactly what we should not be doing. And
Hmm.
it should be work that we're all working together, rolling up our sleeves and figuring it out by sharing our stories." And I gotta say too, the UFO community is very, very closed also. It's very, very hard to, I find, get your story out because it's like they just want to see the same five, six people that, they've seen.
Yeah.
So so in that sense, it's difficult. It's just really, really difficult.
Hmm. There's like an old boys club in the UFO community. I agree.
Yeah, yeah,
I agree because I got on a couple of shows and one of them actually ridiculed me. And I was surprised by that. I was like, why is this person ridiculing me when I'm just trying to tell my story?
yeah,
I couldn't figure that out.
yeah. Well, I got also ridiculed too uh from Nick Pope.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. He he was a uh he worked at MOD.
Hmm.
But when I talked to him, the first few times I talked to him, because I met him through Georgina Bruni, and she was really, really nice and very helpful. And she said, "Oh yeah, he's a great guy. Yeah, he'll really want to, help you and whatnot." And we talked a little bit the few times that we did talk, and then he was on Larry King Live and all these other things going on. And and I was happy for him because I felt like he was really sharing. He was really helping the people that have experienced it and whatnot. But one thing that I thought uh, and I talked about as if he was working at MOD in 1980, because I thought I was talking to that person, and he never corrected me. I was just like, well, when you were at MOD during that time. And, he just never corrected it. And then he told me later on, he said, "Well, it's your fault for not finding out." I mean, eventually I did find out. I saw the write-up they did on Wikipedia, and it said he was born in 1965. So that meant in 1980, he was all of 15, 14, something like that. So I know he didn't work at MOD then. And and when he did work at MOD, his dad, who was up there in MOD, I mean, got him the job, and his job was pretty much clerical kind of work. I mean, Philip Mantle has all these different documents on it from MOD saying that these are the things he did. So, he for me, he's been a disappointment. And the fact that it says to me that the UFO community doesn't really do a good job vetting,
Hmm.
They keep inviting the same people. It's like, well, we can tell you you know, whatever, but, you know, and I just think that, people just want to know the truth, they don't want to hear, you know, this is your, I mean, Nick Pope said to me once, or he wrote to me, well, this is my bread and butter, this is my job.
Mhm.
And, in some ways I can respect that, but in many ways I don't respect it because you weren't there, or you're sounding like you're the authority of something that you did not investigate. You read about it, you learned about it, but you did not. And I mean, it would have been nice if you were even witness, but you weren't, So
Mhm.
anyway, I'm probably, by saying all this, I'm probably a lot of people are probably not going to like me, but you
I
know,
feel the same way about Nick Pope. He's kind of like a gatekeeper.
yeah, yeah, because who's who's going to some of these conferences? Are you going to these conferences,
No.
or, where you could share your story? I mean, that would be great. I'd rather just see people that have experienced it and have done research, and to see, and there are some really, really good researchers too. So don't, please don't get me wrong. The guy Ross, trying to think of his last name, Cohort. I think he wrote he's written a couple of books. He's he's gotten pretty far up there now. Yeah, I heard that the guy Lou.
Lou Elizondo.
Yeah, I heard he's kind of gotten into trouble um with his story. So, it's the same thing. If you say something, um you have to, if you lie, then you have to start managing your lies. And then of course you're not going to be perfect. But if you tell the truth, it's always simple. I mean, that's why with my story, especially about seeing the UFO, I have never said anything like, oh, it landed and then these three, uh, beings floated out or something like that. Now, if anyone hears that, that did not happen. I don't embellish. I won't embellish because it's, I think it does a disservice to just all the pieces that we're putting together.
Hmm. And seeing something up close is crazy enough.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Because like I said, we had that lost time too, that I have no idea what happened from 3 o'clock in the morning until this daybreak. I mean, and it was so interesting to me that things like that are so subtle, that how our minds are so malleable, I mean, uh, maybe that's where they came up with that drug that they give you when you go for a colonoscopy. It knocks you out. It's like a light switch.
Yeah.
Awake, you're not awake.
Hmm.
It's kind of scary to think that our minds can be that altered and whatnot. But it does come out. It doesn't come out through your subconscious or your dreams. So that's where, I mean, I had never heard of, that story about going and seeing the zone of silence. I had no idea. I never heard of the zone of silence. I know, so it was just really, to me, things were definitely planted in my mind, my subconscious, and, you know, who knows?
Yeah, right after me and my friend had our series of sightings, we got interested in hypnosis and we did
Hmm.
past life regression on each other. And we were just young people, where the heck did we get ideas like that from? I don't, I still can't figure all that out.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, someone will probably have to put me in touch with somebody to see what's in there, I
Mhm.
mean, but I do believe that, like I said earlier, we do have these gifts to to be able to, feel. the vibration of a place, and in some cases it does put your mind will put a picture to it, or a small video in your head,
Hmm.
like seeing the guy who was taunting me near the pond at over on Bentwaters, and then listening to Simon Holland talk about it. They, oh yeah, yeah, that's been around. Yeah, a lot of people have seen that, and a lot of people have exactly. It's apparently the whole land back a several thousand years ago was underwater. So I'm thinking, damn, so it's like I said, those things, you corroborate a lot of what you've experienced with others, and it adds validity. And I think you should check into something to do with those lights, those orbs, with the being coming out of it.
Yeah, it was very interesting because you could see the orange light, but you couldn't really see a craft there. But my friend said there was an entity in there, so it's like they're using some kind of plasma, and that's what Samuel Holland or Simon Holland says, that there's some kind of plasma and interdimensional beings, and
Mhm.
it's got to be something like that to do with plasma.
Yeah. And the other thing too, if you think about it, no one's been seeing things coming, say you look up into the sky and or someone has a really good telescope and they can see out to the furthest planet, and you say they're keeping watch on the our universe that we're in, or our galaxy. And because they're not coming that way, they're coming through dimensions, they're coming through realms. They're because they can fade in, they can fade out, they can, you know, and it's real. I mean, I truly believe that. And
Yeah.
my sister she had kind of an awakening where she sent me a photo of it, and I mean a video. I'll have to find it and I'll share it with you. And it was across the street. She woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning and it's dark out. So she says, I better take a video of this so I can share it with Lori. So she takes this video, and it's these lights that are going from directly across the street, from the driveway across the street. There are these lights kind of bouncing around, and then they go to the right about 30 feet in the other direction to the next driveway. And now they're kind of like, it looks like they've created with their lights like a pole on each side, but they're also still kind of moving back and forth, kind of like ants in a way. But it was like, when I saw it, I looked at it and I said, Donna, you know what I think they did? I think they were showing you a portal. That's what I really think. Because you got these two poles, it's like a gateway to go in, and they're going back and forth, trying to keep this energy up.
Hmm.
It's kind of like I said to her, most people only see one orb, if they're lucky. Maybe they see a few or 10. But she had this thing, it looked like traffic. It was kind of, like, yeah, Donna, anytime you do something, you always have to do it a little bit bigger than everybody else. But yeah, it was pretty phenomenal. And I just I also think sometimes some of these things run in families too.
Hmm.
Yeah. Have you had any of your siblings experience anything like that?
No, I'm the only one, and I didn't really talk about it with my family a lot because if I did, I would get ridiculed.
Yeah, yeah,
Nobody ever seen anything like that,
yeah.
And I started having the experiences again in 2012. I had four big sightings, and one of them was super strange. I was going down this country road, and it was very desolate, and this black triangle just started flying in front of me. He just pulls in and like he's going in formation with me. And I was doing 65 and it was about the size of a Cessna, totally silent, had like baffles on the back of it, no lights, and it just flew along for a couple hours right in front of me, you
Wow.
know, like 50 feet away, like we were
Wow.
going in formation or something. It was the strangest thing, and I'll never figure it out. But I got the feeling that that might have been one of ours. You know,
Hmm.
we're rumored to have black triangles, you know,
Mhm.
and I wonder, I don't know why it was flying in front of me, but it was obvious it wanted me to see it, and
Yeah,
see it I did.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, you kind of wonder why, like you said, why me,
Hmm?
And but on the other hand, if you haven't seen it, then it's like, well, how come not me?
Yeah.
So and I just kind of feel like, don't worry, you'll get your turn, and don't, you know, even if it means when you, I mean, I started having these abilities of, I'd go into a home. I was selling insurance for quite a while. And I would walk into this home. I remember it happened 3, 4 times. One time it was this woman, I was in an apartment building, and this woman came up to me and said, my mom really needs life insurance. And I said, oh, well, I'll walk in, I'm right here anyway. So I go in there, and when I walk into the apartment, it was kind of cold a little bit, but then when I walked into her room, it was warm. It was as if the light in the room was like enveloped her in this big hug. I mean, I could feel it. It was just so powerful. And and all of a sudden I thought to myself, because this happened 2 other times, I said, I know there are angels in this room, or at least that's what I'm calling them. That's but they're big. They're like demented. They're about 7 feet tall, and they're workhorses. And I sit down next to her because I feel them. I mean, and I'm thinking, I'm not embarrassed, I can, so I sit down and I hold her hand, and I don't know this woman, okay? So I hold her hand and I said, will you tell me, is this room crowded? And she has this serene look on her face, like, yeah, it is. Yeah. I said, there are angels in here, aren't there? They're at the foot of the bed. And she said, yeah, yeah, there they are. And of course, I couldn't see them, but I could see them in my mind. So I knew where they were, and what they looked like. But
Hmm.
she, it turned out that about 2, 3 days, I knew I couldn't help her with insurance because I knew they were ready to escort her to the next realm, or we can call it heaven. Sometimes I have a lot of problems with our language because, we call things based on religion or, whatnot. Um, but I went back a few days later and she had passed away. And I asked the woman that had invited me in originally, I said, do you mind if I take a walk into her bedroom? And she said, no, not at all. So I walk in the bedroom and it feels cold, just like the rest of the apartment. It was like the whole thing, it just completely vacated. And like I said, I had this happen like 3, 4 times, and in some cases, I thought, I think I'm in control, but sometimes there's certain messages that you get that say, oh, let me check on this person, see how they're doing today. Or so you go and check on them and you find out that they're also getting close to death. And this one woman who, not the woman I was just talking about, but this other woman, I had met her a year earlier and she had learned she had cancer. And then when I saw her again, it was I looked at her and I could clearly see that she was really at the end. And then I said to her, no, I didn't say to her yet. I was looking around the room and I said, I know there are angels in here. It's like, okay, I got to figure out where they are. And this woman next to me was talking and I said, I know, I just need quiet. So I'm looking around, and then all of a sudden, like, they were in a corner. They were in a corner. And she sat down, and her husband sat in a chair directly in front of her. And they were both leaning into each other, like holding their hands. And I could tell that she was really upset. She didn't want to leave. She loves him so much, she didn't want to leave. And I mean, I could feel it. And after he got up, he had to go take a shower. he got up and I sat down in the chair and leaned over to her and I held her hands and then I was just through my hands and her hands, I was just telling her that love is endless. Love is your love for him will never die. That will never die. That's one artifact in our lives that will never, never, never die. And and I said, your love will go on forever with him, and and he will love you always. And so we were just having this conversation in our minds, and then I got up and I kissed her on the head, and it was so strange because these are things I don't normally do. I'm kind of, I respect people's uh that they don't want people kissing them on the head or whatever. And then the husband came in and said, I'm so sorry, but I'm going to have to ask you to leave because we got too much going on here. And I was totally fine with it. It was like I just knew that whatever I was intended to do, we just did it. And I, it was funny so, because I had no place being there. I wasn't a hospice person. I wasn't a friend. It was just I met her and I thought she was a very kind person, but I didn't know that I was going to be instrumental in her, you know, um, in the pain she was feeling about the loss. So I walked out the front door. And I remember the cold air hitting me in the face, and I said, kind of like looking up in the heavens and talking to God and saying, wow. Wow. Who would have thought my day was going to go in this direction? And I felt good. I felt good about it. But I just kind of think these are some of the things, the gifts that we were given from those times of, seeing the entities that technically we're probably not intentionally supposed to see. But I think the more that you're around it, the more that you develop it as a skill set, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I know what you mean about the love thing. I was having some intense grief over a situation once, and I got up in the middle of the night and I got this intense feeling of peace and love, and I wrote a paragraph about it, and it's just so weird. It's like having a near-death experience without dying.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. My sister who passed away, she had a near-death experience and she wasn't afraid to die. She actually opted to not go on a ventilator. And I begged her to get on ventilator. She didn't have COVID. It was around that time, but she had pneumonia, and it was just kind of like she said she was ready to go and be with my mom and my brother and my dad. Well,
Mhm.
not just my brother and my mom and her son. Her son had died earlier, several years earlier. But yeah, yeah, that one kind of blew me out of the water because I wasn't ready for her to leave. And even as wonderful as it may be, I just kind of think that we have so much to do here
Hmm.
that I mean, I guess we'll be ready to leave our body whenever, but you know, but to make that decision to not do something and that will cause you'll be death, so just kind of it messed me up, but on the other hand, that's what caused me to write the Rendlesham Lone Ranger. It was like just a story from my heart of, I look back at Lori at age 18, me at age 18, and know that at age 18, I was just little, I was a naive kid,
Hmm.
and so I feel like I'm honoring the Lori that was in England because Um, there's still a lot of me in her, except being 66, I've learned a lot of valuable lessons over my life. And, I, if I look at myself as 18 years old and look at this girl as separate from me, it's like I kind of want to protect her and I want to share her story and know how brave and how determined she was. So that's what my book is about, is that, there were a lot of people out there that told me I couldn't do certain things constantly.
Hmm.
And I turned around and said, yes, I can. You can't stop me. I mean, yeah, yeah, with his will, I'm going to figure it out. So, so another reason to read my book is because it's a story about hope and it's a story about innocence and it's a story about being empathetic and loving to others and yet seeing some crazy shit. No offense to the entities out there, but it was just kind of, in handling it. And there is a book two coming out soon. It's well, I got one book that I'm editing right now. It's called We Ain't Got a Barrel of Money. And it's mainly it's a story again in the voice of my sister Christine, because that's again, I miss her so much that I wanted to um share that story, especially with my other sisters. So it's kind of like a legacy. But then there's going to be a part two to the Rendlesham Lone Ranger
Hmm.
because that book's going to go into the journey after I left there and how I found out it came back and how, you know, where the journey took me and all that.
Well, great. We'll look forward to those books coming out.
And,
This has been a great interview, Lori. It's been really fascinating talking to you. I'm sure people are going to love this interview. Um,
well, I appreciate you having me on, Andrew. I truly do. And you're a remarkable young man. And I just think that I could see you as a friend. I think you're a friend. We're
mhm.
friends.
Yeah, certainly. I'm almost 66 myself. We're,
Mhm.
I'll be 66 next month.
Okay. Well, we were born the same year. There you go.
Yep.
Uh, July. So you're a Cancer?
Yep.
Yeah.
7-7.
Okay. My sister Donna, she was born July 12th, 1960.
Hmm.
We're only about 11 months apart. She's actually my co-host on God, Aliens, and a Cup of Coffee. And I would love to have you on my show.
Oh, that would be great. Send me an invite. I'm there.
I will. Definitely.
Okay. Any
So,
parting words, Lori?
what's that?
Any parting words for our guests?
I hope that those out there who watch this, that you do check out the book on Amazon. You can get the Kindle pretty cheaply. I didn't make the pricing on it, so but it is about 400 pages. But they say it's a fast read. It's a fun read. It's an interesting read, and so I would really love people to read it. And on top of it is that Capel Green, the documentary, is coming out and it's going to premiere over in England on July 20th.
Mm.
And I'm in it.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, it's done by director Dion Johnson and it's got Larry Warren in it. Now, Larry's gone through hell with the UFO community. Um, and I just I pretty much stood by him because he was the one that wrote Left at East Gate with his partner at the time, Peter Robbins. But Larry, I did meet him. Our lives did intersect at Bentwaters. I was getting ready to leave. I had like about 2 weeks left, and he had just gotten the Bentwaters. And I wasn't about ready to ask him how many days he has left at the base. But but he was one of the first people, whistleblowers, to really share the story. And there have been a lot of people who have corroborated his story. And but he took a beating over the past several years. And so anyway, I think it's going to be a wonderful story that'll really add clarity to his story, my story, and the other stories that people haven't heard about. And the other piece is that each of us who witnessed something, this includes you too, is that we all will be presented with information through our mind differently, which is ironic, which is kind of strange, but just because if two people are standing next to each other and they witness something, they may witness it completely different. They may witness it like with Jim Peniston and John Burroughs.
Hmm.
They were not that far from each other, but Jim Peniston witnessed the craft and saw the glyphs on it. The glyphs, one of the glyphs in particular, I didn't know about Jim Peniston's glyph, but I drew it on when I first found out about the UFO coming back. I drew a picture of me at East Gate. It's actually in the book, and it shows it's with color pencils, and it's a triangle with one circle that's outside of the triangle, and then one circle that's on the bottom that's on the that's partially inside the circle. And that was one of his glyphs. And ironically, this is before any of us talked or I got to see, his picture. It was sort of reminds me of again Close Encounters when all these people were drawing different versions of that mountain. I forget what they call that mountain. Devil's. Do you know the name of the mountain? I think it's up in Montana, one of those places.
Yeah, it's a devil something or other.
Yeah, yeah. Anyway,
Devil's Tower.
what's that?
Devil's Tower.
Devil's Tower. Yeah. And they were all drawing different versions of Devil's Tower because they felt the urge. And so while it's going on, there are things that will overlap, but everyone's experience will be different
Hmm.
and and different in a way of what they've seen, what they've witnessed. So often you can't really trust your senses of seeing, smelling, hearing, that kind of thing. Sometimes the sense that you need to use is your gut.
Hmm.
You listen to your gut because your gut's pretty smart, and because that will show you what you're intended to see and know. So
Yeah, that message Jim Peniston got too, that binary code is pretty
that,
crazy.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And that again, do I believe all this stuff? That's the other thing people think, well, let me judge, right? Do I believe it? No, it's not my place to judge. To be honest with you, he went through it. This is what he experienced. This is what they downloaded in him. They
Hmm.
did that to him. They did the zone of silence in me. And, it's the same thing with, it comes out in different ways, and it's just it makes it even more remarkable because it's not just what you witnessed at that moment, it's what's been planted inside of you that does come out. And you know and I know they're all still on the same journey, Jim Pennison and John, and Gary Osborne has been amazing working with Jim Penniston. He's done a lot of work to help decipher those the one, the binary code.
Hmm.
And uh, yeah, so anyway, but I think the main message that I'm getting out of it is that we need to do a better job taking care of our planet.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Exactly. Well, thanks for being on, Lori. And we'll have to get together on another podcast sometime.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Let me an advice. Thanks for watching, folks.
Thank you so much. Bye bye.
Bye bye.